So welcome back to video 5, and I've titled this Thought and Emotion. And I think they're very important parts of being a human behaviour, our ability to influence, and also what influences us. So let's start with thought first of all. There's often two levels of thought. We can actively think of something, we choose to think about something. We'll solve a problem, we'll answer a question, we'll bring up and review a memory. But then also think of just glancing outside of that train window as you're passing by and seeing the scenery. There's this passive level of thought where you can sit there and within seconds things appear that you didn't ask for and that you also didn't actively pursue. And this is known as background noise. Think of it as the hissing on a radio that's not quite tuned in to a station. Because you can't stop thought. Same as we dream at night, there's always something going on in the brain. It's always an active kind of organ. And then emotion. Emotions are largely a consequence of two realms and two things within each of those realms. The first one is internally. What you say to yourself or about yourself. And at a deeper level, what you're thinking, where you place your attention, can change your state and create biochemistry, feelings, etc. And from the outside, there's two ways that we can change emotionally. What we see and what we hear. Somebody close to us can say something. It instantly transforms us. Could make you feel great, could make you feel terrible. We see a thing and that changes state as well. And I'm going to add a deeper layer to the realm of thought. And I'll tell you a brief story, very powerful story, on the danger of distraction and chasing after everything in your mind. Imagine a large hall with the big slidey doors at either end, the French doors I think they call them. And in that hall are two monks in a deep meditation practice. And it's a lovely summer's day. Doors are open, there's a gentle breeze coming through. And all of a sudden there's a very tiny flicker sound, like the fluttering of wings. And the first monk notices this. And he opens one eye and he sees a butterfly. He smiles and he closes that eye and he goes back into his practice. Now the second monk hears the noise, opens one eye, opens two eyes, starts to track the butterfly, gets angry that this noise is now interrupting his practice and has disturbed him, wanders off to grab the net, and just like the classic cartoons, is now running up and down the hall with the net, trying to catch this butterfly that has ruined his meditation practice. There's a very, very powerful moral story behind that, a metaphor if you will. It's within us to be either of those people in any situation. Here's a thing that I can leave alone. Here's a thing that's just done something bad or that I don't like. And I have to do something about that to resolve it in some way. Be the first person and I'll tell you why. Thoughts are not right and they're not wrong. They're not good or bad beyond judgment, which is just a label that we give them. Because in and of themselves, they're breath, they're an utterance. That's it. They're a thought, they're neural activity. They are a brief spike on a machine that would register them. You are not your thoughts. And that can be a concept that flies over the head. You are not your thoughts. But you can become them should you take option 2. You see, thoughts are like clouds passing in the sky. And what the first monk did is observe the beauty of the clouds, the environment, and maintained his practice. Everything's fine and nothing's disturbing me. But the second monk saw the clouds and had to do something. Jumped up, took action, completely removed himself from the process and the practice. So pay attention to what pulls you out of what you're doing. And the thing with thoughts as well is if we are not our thoughts but we can become them, pay big attention to what you're thinking, because there are consequences to becoming attached to thoughts. They are background noise most of the time. The mind's a wonderful thing and can serve us if we actively have something that we want to work out, like a problem, some creativity. We're going to create a post online or write a book or compose a piece of music. But to sit there with nothing going on, and this is interesting because nature doesn't like a vacuum. The brain doesn't like a vacuum. There's never nothing going on. So to not be actively doing something is to passively be at the mercy of what largely is your default radio station. When we are not doing things out here or actively thinking of things in here, we're looking for problems. We're scolding ourselves because of what we did and who we were and how we hurt people and how people hurt us, and therefore we may have deserved it in some way. Or we're now worried about that big scary future and us not being good enough. And now with emotion is a fascinating area because emotions aren't right or wrong either. And neither are they good or bad, they're just emotions. Change emotion to one word, which will potentially allow it to sit a little easier in your world, hopefully. Feedback. The way you feel is feedback from information gathered internally and externally through the senses. And also a combination of those, that interaction, the organism environment. So if emotions aren't good or bad and they're not right or wrong, what are they? If they're feedback, they are also objectionable. And what I mean by that is you can choose which ones you actually take on board and act upon. So I'm going to give you a very powerful technique that's had a huge impact on people that experience anxiety, overwhelm, and doubt. What happens when we feel discomfort? As we know from previous videos, the brain does not like it. There's a red dot on the radar. The security guard says problem. We feel a certain way and therefore we are taken away from that situation because of a potential threat. So when there's discomfort, we never stay there long enough to understand it or do anything about it. What often happens? We step on the hot floor, we get burnt, or we run. We feel anxious, we're terrified, we don't do the thing that was possibly something that could really advance us in some way. We rarely actively walk up to situations or have goals that are very dangerous and sabotage. Quite often we are nervous and overwhelmed because we really want this thing. We know how valuable it is in our own growth, and yet we don't believe we can do it, we don't deserve it, we talk ourselves out of it. So to add to that, instead of running, stand your ground. Do something that you've potentially never done before. And this rings true for a lot of people that suffer from, we're going to rename it, anxiety. That's the hat that goes on the head. It's the name tag. Now, I'm not saying anxiety doesn't exist, but I'm showing you how creative you can be with the inputs and the labels and the information that you feed your brain. When people are anxious, they're nervous, yes? Some of them are very nervous, but they're nervous. So as an umbrella term, what if we changed I suffer from anxiety to I'm nervous? I'm uncomfortable right now. I feel nervous. Because what I want you to do is start to honour how you feel. And actually, as a feedback loop, confirm that you are feeling what you're feeling. Right now, I'm really nervous. And I'm okay with that. Because I know it will pass. Now, this has helped so many people that were literally borderline panic attacks, and it was about to have a serious impact on their job and career. I got them to recreate a state, shallowness of breath, washing machine in the stomach, tingles, palm sweats, raised pulse. They were really on edge. And I said to them, what do you now want to do? And they said, run away, I can't stand it. I said, stop. Sit with the monster and understand it. Honor it. Call it what it is. Confirm to yourself what is going on here. I took a deep breath and they exhaled. Right now, I feel very, very nervous. And I'm okay with that. I completely accept it. I honour those feelings. They're important, they're feedback, and they keep me alive. And they will pass. In less than 60 seconds, they went from a heightened state to being at rest once more. That is the level that you can have control at. Now, I'm not saying this will work for everyone all of the time, but if it works for most of the people most of the time, let's say 60 to 70% as a rough approximation, that's a huge chunk of people that instead of feeling overwhelmed and running from the unknown terror that could slay them, they stay with it, honour it, understand it, and it disappears. I hope that helps.